dial, it's 10:30. Be back. Spin that back show, all the classics on track. From 79 to 99, we're crossing the gap. Album reviews, little known facts, hip hop intact. Saturday mornings, dive into the history. Samples and stories, old school mysteries. Early self-static, Shiraz and CDD. Nola Batapine. Turn it up, let the vinyl spin. 10:30 sharp, where the stories begin. From the golden era, treasures within. Spin that back show every Saturday when we break it down, the legends and the lore. Every beat, every rhyme, uncover more. From Grandmaster Flash to Nas's Raw, we're bridging the past, hip-hop's core.
Okay, once again, it's Saturday morning, 10:30. Thank y'all for joining the Spin That Back show. Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Afro Agnostics, man. Y'all know who we talking about today?
The legendary OG Ice-T. That's what's up.
Yeah, we talking about Ice-T right here on the Spin That Back show today. The legendary, like they say. So Ice-T goes way back on the West Coast. I mean, I know you from Memphis, but no, you grew up in LA. You're born in Memphis, but raised in LA.
Yeah, exactly.
And Mr. Afro Agnostics, you was in Detroit around this time when Ice-T started making his rounds in hip hop.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. So I started hearing about Ice-T. It had to be in the early 80s or mid 80s. I don't know how you want to put it. What, 80? What was it, by 82, 83, somewhere around up in there? When did Breaking come out?
So Breaking came out in 1984. That was the first time I heard of him. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that was around that time, around 83, 84, we started hearing about Ice-T. Before he had a major record deal, but he had little singles and everything out there and everything, and we was hearing about him, and man, he was going hard. In fact, Ice-T is like, it was Ice-T, and then it was Tidy T and Mixmaster Spade. And who else was there on the West Coast? There wasn't really too many other people on the West Coast that you can think of, right?
Hey, he put on King T. He was a dude that really was an active participant, sort of like a big brother and a guy that helped King T. So King T always gives props to Ice-T for the role he played in his success in his career. So he was that dude.
Spin that back. I mean, to get deeper into it, Ice-T put on a whole lot of people. Yeah.
Well, he did. He also formed the Rhyme Syndicate, which actually put out Everlast. So you know what I'm saying. So House of Pain. So yeah. So
I just got to mention on the side, there's a Detroit connection to Rhyme Syndicate. My boy, when I dropped out of high school, went to an alternative school. You can look him up, Champtown, Brian Herman, but he's a part of Rhyme Syndicate too, from even going back to the late 80s. So I've been on tour with him and Ice-T. We met, I met Ice-T a couple of times through him. That's cool. He's a part of the Rhyme Syndicate as well. Just want to mention that, Detroit,
Hey, that's what's up. That's some real type stuff.
Detroit in the house. Yeah, Detroit in the house. Yeah. Rhyme Syndicate, that was like the East Coast and West Coast. You had cats from the East Coast, cats from the West Coast. Seem like most of them from the East Coast, though, honestly, to be real with you.
Well, I mean, that was kind of where it kind of like, I hate to say the word real, but I mean, West Coast hip hop was getting there, but East Coast hip hop was already there. So when you were getting those type of people that were representing a certain sort of like a certain swag, a certain level of hip hop, that was a cleaner field to pick from. So, kind of that's what it is.
Was Donald D? Donald D was from the East?
Yeah, he's from the East Coast. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, spin that back. I thought you knew that. Oh, man, for real, though.
So, and I believe Ice-T was from New Jersey, right?
Born in New Jersey, but raised in L.A.
Yeah, because he talked about chilled with the brothers that built the old school. He had that relationship with the OGs. So that's why,
Islam.
Yeah, exactly. Africa, Islam, Grandmaster Caz, you know what I'm saying? It's like, and that's the thoroughness. That's the OG-ness, of his background, which ultimately plays out when we get to much later. When we talk about the art of rap, something from nothing. But let's go back into the early stuff. So it's 1984 Breaking. That was my first exposure, and it was Reckless. And I know that people kind of clown Reckless now, but Reckless is still a joint for me. I still dig it. I still have fun with it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't necessarily play it in the car, but if I hear it, it's gonna take me back to '84 in a positive way. So that's what's up.
In the late '80s, I went to a show. I saw him perform, and I was puzzled as to why he didn't do Reckless. I mean, this is late '80s still, and like Reckless. I mean, in Detroit, that was such a big song. Reckless was. It was. That shit was,
and correct me, Detroit. They were kind of the father of the electric. The electric movement. So they had that tempo. That was definitely know your market. But because as I understand it, he was, even though he had been rapping, he was like a breakdancer. I mean, when they found him, when they recruited him for breaking, he was a breakdancer up at the Radiotron. It was they call it the Radiotron. I think they call it just the radio and breaking, but it was the Radiotron. And and my brother used to break dance over there, and they had a rivalry and stuff like that. But and the producers were like, hey, we want you to be a rapper and all this other stuff. So he might have done a little bit of sort of like adjusting to give them what they wanted as opposed to what he really was. So I think that may play a part in why he doesn't really feel too good about that, because people do trash it. Like they say, like, oh, garbage, and he says it was garbage, but you loved it at the time too. But I'm saying it wasn't garbage. But Go ahead, Upload. I'm gonna come back.
I'm just saying, I mean, at that time, when I first heard Ice-T, like I say, it wasn't really too much to compare him to because it wasn't really too many MCs out here on the West Coast. Then I think Egyptian Lover and all them started coming out around that time too. Yeah. Arabian Prince. I think Egyptian Lover actually first. But hip hop was on that electronic tip and everything. Everybody was breakdancing and popping and all that old stuff. It was just that time. That's just what it was.
So what do you call it? I always forget the terminology. I apologize for messing it up. Is it like electric funk or something like that?
Electro funk. Electro funk.
Yeah. That was a big movement on the West Coast. We weren't, they were created with Uncle Jam's Army and the Egyptian Lover and the Arabian Prince. But I'm just saying that was the default. The other stuff was an excursion. That was the default.
You did have Wrecking Crew, I think, around that time too.
Exactly. Yeah. Dr. Dre, J. Yeah. So Surgery. So we was into that tempo, and giving props to Detroit, because I think Clear and all this stuff that came from Detroit.
Oh yes, Cybertron. A lot of people know tech music started in Detroit. So Detroit cats did it, Okay. But it's interesting, I think the origin of that sound, though, I still place like play at your own risk and Planet Rock and all of that. That was like the Planet Rock sound. I thought that was could be in the category of electric funk. So I don't know.
Shout out to brother Mark Car on the Sticks and Be Greater.
Mark,
that's what's up. Yes.
Yes, sir. I was just getting ready to say the same thing. Shout out to you, brother. Appreciate y'all being here. Give y'all spend one time and one more time for the other one right there. Well, anyway, it'll come when it comes. Actually, let me do this then. Let me just back it up then. But yeah.
Now, I just want to say that as much as I love, and again, I was a break dancer. When breaking came out, I was a break dancer. That was before I became a DJ or whatever. But I remember break dancing came out, breaking came out, and I was already a breaker and stuff like that. And hearing Reckless made me want to rap. Ice-T is really the guy that made me, transition from just being the break dancer guy to, I'm about to write a rhyme about my breakdance crew. You know what I'm saying? I was like, the first rhyme I wrote was basically rhyming about my breakdance crew. And it was like basically inspired from Ice-T's, Reckless and stuff like that. But when I think of Ice-T, what really got me going is this little song called You Don't Quit. I'm going to tell you right now. That song, now, I may not play Reckless in the car, but I will play You Don't Quit in the car. You Don't Quit is where he was going off. And he had that line about like a pit bull locking on a Doberman's neck. That was West Coast. That was Los Angeles. That was, I mean, you know what I'm saying? This dude was really just like had a finger on the pulse of what was going on in LA. It was a banger. It was with the cartoon, and it just, man, it scratching. It was breakdancing. It was b-boy. It was dope. Love that song. Love it.
I was confused with Don't Stop. That's what he said. My name is Ice-T, as you pronunciated, but You Don't Stop, right? Or
so the songs was, I think it was Don't Quit. You Don't Quit. So
let's give me a sample of it real quick. Let me see if I can do
yes,
it.
sir.
Oh, I start rocking, let's get one thing stated. My name is Ice-T when you pronunciate it, but I'm not the T the British drinkies knew. I'm Ice capital T, yo, what's the beat for this tune?
Sounds devastating to your ear.
Yeah. The Just Don't Stop, you know, scratching the Z3 MCs, which is classic Z3 MCs. Go check it out, man. That song, that's another breakdance song. I was about to pull out some cardboard or something, but you know, but yeah, so you know, yeah, that was a dope ass song. So You Don't Quit was the first one, and then Dog in the Wax was
Dog in the Wax.
Yeah, so it was sort of like a
Dog in the Wax. Super, it blew You Don't Stop out the water to me.
You Don't Quit. I don't know, man. I don't know.
This is when he was already in for a couple of years, you know, because he had first released a song called "The Coldest Rap." And, you know, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis actually put that together for him. Spin that back.
Crazy. Serious?
Yeah. No, I remember that. That wasn't the song that I was like crazy about, but that's you absolutely right. That preceded that. But I always talking about the songs that were my introduction to the great dude.
Oh, I'm just saying, you know, because you know,
it was important. It was important.
He was making this breakdancing music like Body Rock and Killers and Reckless, and you know, You Don't Quit. But Dog in the Whack. Okay, now with that right there, bro. That he started some stuff.
What taste, man?
Oh, some Dog in the Whack.
That's when I became a DJ. That was one of the first records I got was Dog in the Wax. So you know, on vinyl. So that's when I fully
react to his attack. Evil E's in the place called Dog in the Wax.
I'm gonna skip around on this a little bit.
Someone heard, if you bite, I'll take your life. Best believe that's word. FBI was wanted, but them suckers can't stop me. Mean rapping mother terrorizing can't stop me.
Let me get to the end.
Terrorizing.
Girls still out and fight for the post position that my jammy snap. The player from LA, cooler than any J. My name is Ice-T. I make the mafia pay. Dog in the Wax.
Man,
yeah,
come on.
You know, yeah. That ain't on You Don't Quit. That's a dope ass song, but yeah.
I never heard nothing like that was coming so ferocious up until that point. I mean, when we heard this dude, it was like, this dude is out here for real killing. It was like, it gotta be. And then he did Cool J. He said the player from LA cooler than any J. I was like, oh my goodness.
And you know what?
Yeah.
He was kind of biting LL style. What you know, with these songs were, you know, it was like you could tell when Ice-T talks about how ultimately when he goes to like 6 in the morning and stuff like that, they're like, dude, why are you sounding like if this ain't you? You need to be you. Yeah, because you was basically kind of emulating, but LL, in his defense, LL was the template at that point in time. So, you know, that just kind of was.
Well, he openly said he imitated Schoolie D on 6 in the morning.
Yeah,
so.
He had to. You couldn't lie about it. The evidence was very clear.
But this is actually before 6 in the morning, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes. 6 in the morning came afterwards. That was when it changed. He was known for sort of like, even though you had the coldest rap, which is an example of being the Ice-T that we basically kind of grown to know. But you know, in the beginning, you know, the big exposure was the breakdancer dude, you know, as far as from breaking and stuff like that, breakdancing energy, and then the LL energy from You Don't Quit, Dog in the Wax. So, you know.
And all that was
what I think 6 in the morning. Dog in the Wax came out around the same time, actually.
I think so.
Released together.
Dog in the Wax came out, I'm pretty sure before. If put it this way, it might have been on the B side or something like that. But I definitely remember the sequence of You Don't Quit, Dog in the Wax, and those were like the LL type screaming type joints. And he even said this dude was like, "Yo, Ice Cube, you need to just kind of be you," and that's where 6 in the morning came from.
Ice-T, not Ice Cube.
And all that was on Sire Records. Wasn't all that on Sire? I think Sire Records.
The yellow and red or whatever. Yeah. I'm colorblind and face blind, but I still have a concept of what that was. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, and 6 in the morning was just a classic. I mean, come on, let's play just a little bit of it. We gotta go through a little bit.
6 in the morning, police at my door. Fresh Adidas squeak across my bathroom floor.
That's all you need right there, God damn it. But anyway, I'll go a little further.
Out my back window, I make my escape. Didn't even get a chance to grab my old school tape. Mad with no music, but happy cause free. And the streets to a player is the place to be. Got a knot in my pocket weighing at least a grand. Gold on my neck, my pistol's close at hand. I'm a self.
Yeah, he hugged the beat. He did a great objective rapping job on that song. Everything about it, the beat is definitely banging as far as just that whole 808 vibe. Definitely very West Coasty, but I mean it was 100%, you know,
had the Miami appeal too. But those 808, it appealed to Miami big time. 808, yeah.
Yeah, so he did that. I mean, he delivered, and honestly, it's one of the greatest intros to like to a song. When you talk about those legendary intros, like Inspector Deck on Triumph. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's certain people, there's certain intros into a song that are just legendary, and 6 in the Morning is one of those. So, you know, shout out to the Don Ice-T for that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And after that, I think he got a record deal, actually an album deal off that. And he dropped, what was that first album called? Rhyme Pays. And this is where you first see Darling.
This is before the enhancement.
That's no Greeny picture.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. She got powered up on Power too.
Yeah, Power might be Greeny. I'm off from the same source. Damn it. I know not to get it there no more. But anyway. And that's what 6 in the Morning was on. And then it had some other songs on here. I don't remember anything else but 6 in the Morning, to be 100% with you. Rhyme Pays, 6 in the Morning, Make It Funky.
Make It Funky was dope. That was James Brown.
Yeah,
Rhyme Pays is a very good song.
Yo, what you want to do now, man?
Let me just see one thing.
Whatever it is, it's just got to be funky.
1, 2, 3. Make it funky so the people can get down.
Okay, nah, they ain't use that.
Yeah.
Rhyme Pays is much better, I thought.
Rhyme Pays. Let's check with that. Let me see what it do.
Poetry, he was considered New York's hip hop.
It's the intro. But
this whole intro prologue was just man.
Girl tried to jock me, I had to reject her. Always a vigorous voice, some say it's sensuous. Now I'm on the mic, so I think I better mention this. I don't like Gucci, Fila, Louis, or Fendi. Those are fads and I ain't trendy. 20 in it to see Tammy, Laura, or Cindy. I got to be in this St. Wendy. Fuck them while I'm walking.
So about that time, you had those guitar stabs and a whole lot of stuff.
And you know what? I'm still kind of tripping off his energy because that dude, you know what I'm saying? Because you know, a lot of times we get kind of too cool. Like Jay-Z is super swagged out. So you just, you know, I always am amazed when I go back to like listen to Biggie, like on the first song where you just the energy is just real crazy as opposed to the much cooler stuff. So I identify with Ice with the more cooler stuff, but I'm hearing this stuff and all this energy. I mean, he was doing it, you know. So yeah, that's when you're hungry.
That's what I think that put me off about Ice-T, because he did have all that energy when he first started, and then he kind of, you know, fell back a little bit, and it was like, it don't sound the same. You know what I'm saying? I liked him when he was hyped up.
Mm-hmm.
He sounded more like a, you know, an MC. You know, but one thing I can say is Ice-T always had lyrics. He just didn't always deliver them the way I would have, you know, wanted him to. It seems like, you know, he could have went in and kind of punched in a few lines, because some of the stuff was kind of off a little bit. But, you know, as far as what he was saying, it was always on point.
Yeah, I would say that maybe his cadence kind of, you know, but I also think it was kind of part of his style. Because I always think about, like, for example, DMX, one of the things that Brick Walls didn't like about DMX is that he felt like he wasn't rapping, he was talking. So, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, there is something about hugging the beat and the cadence and stuff like that. And I definitely think his later style was more loose, and you know, it was probably more of a deliberate style. It didn't necessarily, you know, win me over like the earlier stuff, but like you said, he was always a lyricist. He was always a hip hopper. He always had that taste. He was always that guy. So, you know, I've just maintained respect for him throughout the whole process. You know, we'll talk about the things that he did beyond just the music, because I mean, he really did some legendary things. You know, coming out, you know, that hip hop origin, so to speak. So he's that guy.
I think he had another release on here. Somebody's got to do it.
Oh, this is a great point right here.
Get an interview with you guys from Billboard magazine. No, zero. Yo, Ice is a girl. Word.
Ice. After the success of your first album, our readers want to know just one thing: how you living?
My lifestyle's crazy, I'm luxury lazy. So much gold that jury don't faze me. Cordless phone, 8 or 9 homes. Girlies on my Jimmy with an Ice T Jones. Bank account booming, fast lane zooming. Going around the world.
This is him yelling.
Max like a preacher, love like a teacher. Got a girl trips in Paris when I wanna, I beat her.
Man, that was horrible. That was horrible. Yep.
Yeah, B Greater. I'm gonna say it now because I definitely want to do it later. But he said Ice and Brother Marquise gave Jay-Z a big hit. That 99 Problems. We'll come back to that because it's that's original Ice-T song. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. And you're right about that. So we're gonna spin that back because we're gonna get back to it in a minute, though. Yes, sir. Yeah, so anyway, let's just go ahead and kind of move on a little bit here. Let's see. Somebody's
I can just mention. Are you going through that rhyme page, or are you moving on from that?
Yeah, unless you got something else you want to say about this.
Well, I just want to add, Pain and Squeeze the Trigger were like the best songs on there for me, though.
No doubt. Number 8, number 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really remember that. I just remember the first 2 albums I 100% had, and that second album, the cover itself is super legendary. You know what I'm saying? It's the dope of a concept. You can take, as an artist, whatever, but I mean, you got to show that cover. And I understand you said it might be grainy or whatever. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about the next album because I'm assuming we're pivoting from Ron.
Yeah, actually, yeah. First, I was going to mention Colors. You did do Colors.
Okay.
So
let's talk about Colors.
Yeah, go ahead. Colors between, Colors sequential in between.
It kind of, I think it was right before he dropped the Power album. Colors came out. But actually, I just wanted to mention Colors. I ain't really much to say about Colors. He wasn't in the movie. He just made the song. And a lot of people think it's in the movie.
But you know what? It is kind of important because the original theme song for Colors was a Rick James song. And I remember Ice-T said he saw that, he heard that, and he was like, nah, that's not it. That can't be it. So he submitted that. That's where Colors came from. When he's like, even though he thought the movie was fake, not a representation, whatever, he's like, look, this is all you got to do. Yeah. Sorry, Rick James, this wasn't it. Yeah.
Cops on the corner looking for a pill. Somebody tell them, take a little chill pill.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. And you know what? This soundtrack got some bangers on it because this had Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em with Salt and Pepper. It had the Butcher Shop with Coogee Rap. Also had a Go On Girl with yeah, exactly. So this I remember, but yeah,
mine is a terrible thing to waste.
That's a shame that I didn't remember that, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So because Marley Marl, he was getting paid off of this one.
Yeah, Warner Brothers,
yeah, real talk, yeah. All right, then there was Power. Let's see if we can pull up the Power cover. Okay, it's grainy.
Now, so this is grainy. This doesn't do justice. But again, this is one of the dopest album covers, legendary album cover. Because not only do you see the front, but when you see the back, because from the front you don't see what they got in their hands, but from the back they got shotguns behind the back. But that's not what makes this album cover great. It's the backside of Darlene that makes this album great. That even LL Cool J in the Death song was basically talking about took this album cover home to the bathroom. So this was a legendary concept. And I remember Ice-T was the first dude talking about when the record industry was just shady. It was hard for you to make your money. And he said one of the tricks to making your money is doing a logo and trademarking it. He said because they got to pay that comes off the top. So if you just create some type of logo and stick it on there, that's going to be a revenue stream for you. So he was one of the first ones that made us think like, okay, we need to come up with a logo.
Man, I want to say Silly Cell. Was Silly Cell involved in that? But the brother from Frisco, name starts with an M. I cannot think of his name. Local rapper, gangster dude, whatever. But they did a duplication of that album cover. The same setup, you know. But it's interesting because they have this, you know, it's a modern times, and you can see kind of like on the documentary Super Size Me, how things got bigger. Because Darlene, who we thought was super thick back then, was nothing compared to the women today. You know, the BB and all that stuff. So
that's what's up.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm gonna get a better picture. I gotta do them some justice.
Do them some justice, bro.
Yeah, that still don't look no good. God damn it!
You know what? There we go.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're right. That's not like Luke. That's not quite Luke dancer type whatever. But trust me, that was bad. That's a beautiful sister.
I don't think he would approve of that, but
yeah. She's a bad sister. She's still a beautiful sister, even though she's on that terrible show. You know?
Yeah. Token woman. Yeah, she's a token woman.
Yeah, we talk bad about that show on Spin That Back because Floyd ain't around to say nothing about it. Okay. He's entertaining in his role, in his way. You know, he's got a strong following. Salute for his business success. But yeah, I don't really rock with a lot of his philosophy. So, you know, Mr. Holcomb.
Shout out to Corey Holcomb, man. Let me give a shout out to Spin That Back one time. Can we get one? There we go. All right, let's see. So on the Power album, what we had on there? We had I'm Your Pusher.
Curtis Mayfield. You know, that's a dope ass song. So, you know, he did that right, you know.
Yeah, that's the one that where you on Hollywood
I'm
Boulevard.
Your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm your I mean, first of all, the original song, Curtis Mayfield, he's just a man. That was just an amazing, fantastic song. But you know, Ice-T definitely on that. He was definitely on his pimp stuff at that point in time, and that was the perfect one for it, you know.
So, he brought it back. He brought it back. I mean, he brought that song back to the Generation X.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And
you see him rocking the perm, you know, on the picture. So you know, he was definitely on his pimp stuff. So you know, that's what's up.
Well, you got to say too, you know, we got to also mention that Ice-T's name.
Just one of the reasons we got Darlene again.
It's inspired by Iceberg Slim, the former pimp and author of the series that I read. The series it's a lot of people use it as a pimp blueprint, but it's really telling a story about. But anyway, that was Ice-T. That's what yeah,
for sure. Tracy Lauren Morrow, born February 16, 1958. So you're right. He's definitely one of the older cats, you know, as far as the OGs. But you know, he is an OG. So
he really ain't us, man. He's a baby boomer. He's a young baby boomer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of East Coast rappers came out here and saw Ice-T. It was like, man, why you up here rapping, bro? You know, we trying to get to where you at because Ice-T had the gold and everything, had the flashy car and everything because he was a hustler. He was really out here in these streets actually making, you know, real money, you know, street money, more or less. And it was like, man, you know, you already got it. You know, he just looked like he had it because, you know, like I said, as far as the streets was concerned, he did have it, you know. So everything he talks about is real. You know, he an OG, but he not a gangbanger gangster. He was just like a, you know, original. You know what I'm saying? That's what OG means for him. He's just an original hustler, player, you know, and all that old good stuff, you know, and everything. And he know a lot of gangbangers and everything. He know the streets and the lifestyle and everything. He cool with it and everything, but he just never was officially a gang member.
Well, if you from LA, you do understand that there's a difference between gangsters and hustlers. There's a different terminology as far as, you know, hustler crews versus gangbang crews. Now, a lot of times people start out hustlers and end up gangsters just because you inherit beef, and if you're gonna do that, you might as well go full-fledged. But you know, there's a difference between a hustler and a gangster. So he was a hustler, you know what I'm saying, like that. But you know, he's still a real dude, you know, real dude that was dealing with guns and criminality and stuff like that. But most importantly, I'm not gonna be celebrating the thuggery. I'm gonna be celebrating the musical stuff, the inspiration, the hip hop. You know, he was that dude. You know, I remember watching Rakim, when he came back, when he did a long, been a long time, you know what I'm saying? And he was performing at the House of Blues. Basically, me and Ice-T was sitting there watching this whole thing, probably about 10 feet apart from each other, standing up, just, giving props to Rakim. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's a dude, he just came out of love. You know what I'm saying? Just to represent and rock to Rakim. So he's that OG for me. That's what's up.
Well, yeah. Well, one thing I can say is this: he never really glorified, the street life. He was telling you hey, it might look exciting, but there's another side to this too. That's one thing I did respect about him when he was telling his stories and everything. So, and you got to understand this too. Just because you're a gang banger or a gang member, inside of gangs, you got, your actual gangsters, your shooters and your robbers and everything. And then you got your hustlers and everything too. You know what I'm saying? It's just all kinds of stuff. But some people are just, like affiliated with the gang, but not actually part of the gang. Some people are actually in the gang, but they're not really like super gangsters, like the shooters and doing all this other stuff. They thing is they might bring in the money, or sometimes they be used to actually get women and stuff like that because they attract the women and stuff like that. People play different roles, but either way, it is what it is. But all I'm saying is he wasn't officially part of no official gang, but he was affiliated, just about everybody's affiliated one way or the other. In fact, if you live in a certain area growing up, even to this day, if you're a little youngster going to school, hey, where you from? Oh, I ain't from nowhere. Where you live? Okay, that's where you from. Wherever you live at.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's why I always say that, depending where you live, there's definitely a lot of pressure to join a gang because you're going to get the stripe of it. Just once the person sees what neighborhood you're from, you're going to get associated with it. So it's sort of like if you're going to get the negatives of associated with it, you better get this. You have temptation to go get the strength of actually being down with it. You know what I'm saying? So, there is some pressure there. I remember that Ice-T was smart. I remember one time he said that he and his homeboys, they invented a game, a big game, a sounding game, just to sort of like as a defensive mechanism, you know what I'm saying, to deal with the gang banging that was, that they were around and stuff like that. So, that brother was always on the next level with it. So
I want to mention something Del Pooh said, though. I think that's what's missing in a lot of the gangster subgenres, that when Ice-T first came, at least the first 2-3 albums, did 3 albums, he always gave balance. It was a little glamorizing and stuff like that, but songs like Pain on the first album from the very beginning, I just remember that line. He said it's fun in the beginning, but it's pain in the end. I mean, he always gave you a reflection of the reality of it. And if I'm not mistaken, he initially called it reality rap, right? So,
yeah,
I think that's something that gangster rap is missing. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. See, it wasn't really gangster rap. It was, like you said, reality rap. And that kind of started with him and people like Mixmaster Spade and them, because they was just talking about stuff that was going on in the neighborhood, stuff that they seen. And then it branched off into NWA and all that old stuff. And then the media gave it that word, that title, gangster rap. Because they was calling it reality rap, and they got that from Ice-T, honestly, because that's what he was calling it, more or less. Wasn't nobody saying,
that's why it resonated. That's why it particularly resonated here. I mean, they were using the terms, one of the dope things about, when you hear like these East Coast rappers and stuff like that, they use the certain slang swag of the whatever. So they're using all these terms, and it's more poetic than just, a straight whatever, discussion of what's going on. It's very cultural, and that was kind of like what NWA, when they're using like our terms and stuff. We know what a strawberry is, we know what a mark is, you know what ganking and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, when you use these terms now, it's basically that energy that we don't have, what the East Coast people kind of do. So it's just
in fact, really let me spin that back one time. I was just looking at a clip of who was that? In fact, it was Ice-T on Drink Champs, and he had said, Tupac had rolled up. He had a strawberry-looking female on, in the car, and Nori was like, "What's the strawberry?" And it was like, man, you didn't listen to NWA, obviously, because he explains what a strawberry is right there in Dope Man. You know what I'm saying?
That's hilarious.
But anyway, yeah. So you're right. Our slang and everything is a little different and everything, and it just is what it is, bro. But you know what? I never heard an East Coast gangster rapper, because you didn't have no gangs on the East Coast really like that. The first gangster rap I heard was Crips and Bloods. That was, or actually DJ Quick. DJ Quick Underground.
I gotta push back.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, not really like, bro. Okay, PSK.
Because PSK is the first gangster rap, and he was talking about PSK stands for Parkside Killers. You're right. I remember the people that, because I used to always hang around the East Coast people, and I wouldn't seek him out. It just was like that's where how the water found its level, type of situation. And they'd always be like, we don't even have gangs on the East Coast anymore. You know what I'm saying? That was definitely like a West Coast thing. And we basically franchised sending Bloods and Crips all over the place and stuff like that. So, that was sort of like probably a negative influence, of West Coast music and West Coast culture. But Parkside Killers, that was some gang stuff. That was the original gang song. That was some gangster ass shit. So,
New York did have big games, especially in the Bronx, but they often talk about, I don't know how accurate this is, but the formation of hip hop actually mitigated the gangs. Africa Bambaataa was a big gang leader. I think he was leader of the Black Spades or the rival to the Black Spades. But there was some type of, I don't know, that after the 70s, it kind of died out in New York. I'm not exactly sure why.
Hey, breakdancing was supposed to be an alternative to fighting and stuff like that. It was a different way of aggression and competition without violence. So that's what it was.
Yeah, it was a non-violent battle, I guess.
But they were heavy into crews. I mean, even when 50 Cent, this is much later in the time and stuff like that, you're basically you have your own personal crew that you get your money with. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was eating off the same. When you talk about, the higher ups were the Supreme and all this, everybody was basically, an employee. You know what I'm saying?
The term, I think the term gangster rap came because Ice Cube said, from the gang called niggas with attitudes. I think that's what set it off right there. That's where the terminology came from. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Ice-T. So Power had, this album. It was actually, a good album. It had a few little songs on here. Let's see where we at with it. I'm Your Pusher, High Roller. I don't remember Heartbreak. No Lethal Weapon. That was an actually good song right there. Any other ones stood out on here for y'all?
High Rollers, because he came with a video for High Rollers. Again, it showed the consequence of activity.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. High Rollers was actually one of those good ones to actually give that example of him telling about the high roller life, and in the end, hey, you better be careful if you want to be a high roller. Something he said at the end of it. Around this time,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The last song too, Ice, Soul on Ice, is kind of a homage to Eldridge Cleaver, a big leader in the Black Panther Party who wrote a book called Soul on Ice.
Yeah, and this album was produced by Africa Islam, who I believe isn't he the son of Africa Bambaataa?
Yeah.
He's not his son, actual son.
Well, maybe not his biological son, but basically his apprentice. Yeah. That's why I'm looking it up now. I always thought he was, but I do see it now. Yeah, exactly. But so and
I wonder if he ever been implicated in the Bambaataa scandal.
Ouch.
He was there.
It's me pivoting to something different. But the syndicate, that's him laying the I guess the groundwork for ultimately the rhyme syndicate that he would ultimately develop.
Right.
Oh yeah, girls, LGBNAF. Let's get butt naked and F tonight. So that was I
want to mention following up to this album, he came out with a documentary too. It was really good. For that day.
Which one was that?
I think I saw something. I think I saw something when I was doing it, we're pulling it up and stuff like that, but I don't have that. I'm sorry.
It was I don't know if it was called Power or something, but I just remember friends, we were, back in the day, those VHS tapes, and we would just play it over and over again. He performed like a lot of these songs in concert. It was a Rhyme Syndicate thing or something. I think a Rhyme Syndicate VHS documentary or something.
He was working all the angles, like I said, just like that whole trademark thing, just how the conglomerate. Again, he was already an older brother in the movement. You know what I'm saying? As far as the industry, working with these producers and stuff like that, because you know the connections that he had with Breaking 2, and you know, I just found out for the first time that Rapping is supposed to be a sequel to Breaking. Even though it doesn't have none of the original people, even though it doesn't have, you know, it's not the follow-up to the story. It's completely unrelated, but I suppose it's supposed to be taking place in the cinematic universe of Breaking. I never saw the movie. I always heard it was terrible, and I ran away from it. So, you know, I still haven't seen it to this day. But, you know.
I don't think anybody has, so. Have you seen Afro Agnostics?
Rapping?
I get them all mixed up. The Breaking and Rapping. I think Breaking. First of all, Breaking was amazing. I mean, there was corny stuff about it, but I mean, that broom scene is one of the most classic scenes. But Ice-T scenes actually in both movies. I mean, he's like going hard in the paint with the scratching and the rock and all this and Electric Boogaloo. I mean, his sequences at the radio, and again, Radiotron was a real hip hop place out here on the West Coast. So, you know what I'm saying? It was just kind of dope that they even put that in there, even though basically that's where they recruited those cats from anyways, because they were all performers at the Radiotron. So, you know, so yeah.
And wasn't the Radiotron at MacArthur Park?
It's over there by there, you know what I'm saying? Because I know they moved it. I remember they had like a sort of like a reemergence of it, sort of like a celebration of it. So, you know, me and Brick Walls went to that. They actually filmed it. So you probably got us on the film somewhere, not breakdancing. We was too old for that. But Turbo, you know, the dude that played Turbo, Boogaloo Shrimp, you know, he showed up with his girl and stuff like that. But you know, it was a beautiful moment, beautiful music, very reflective, you know, and this is like in the 90s. So you're like well removed from, you know, a lot of this sort of like 80s fast paced, you know, breakdance and stuff like that. But you know, it was dope. So, you know. Shout out to the Radiotron.
I might have been jumping ahead a little bit because Lethal Weapon was actually on the Iceberg album, actually.
Okay, yeah.
In fact, let me bring that up here. Let me see. Where is Iceberg? I think I got him in here.
So Iceberg, Freedom of Speech, Just Watch What You Say.
Yeah, it's a bad quality of it, but
that's a long title. That's a long title of a song right there. I mean, an album. It's literally the Iceberg / Freedom of Speech. Just watch what you say.
And you know why he said that? Because this is around the time he was going through all that drama and everything. So Warner Brothers, man, they had him out there. So he was trying to express himself.
So look at the people that he had. What you want to do? He had Donald D, Everlast, Henji, Nat the Cat, Randy Mack, Shaquille Shabazz, Toddy T, MC Taste, and Divine Styler. Divine Styler. Boy, I haven't heard that brother's name in a minute.
Whoa, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, that's you know, that's a dope little collective right there, you know.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to that cat.
Yeah, you know. There's a lot of people that, you know, that just kind of were what they were. But, you know, grown-ups be grown-ups and they kind of move on and do grown-up things. But, you know, that brother might have a podcast, just, you know, just shooting the shoot.
But
so Lethal Weapon, you played yourself, you know.
Yeah, you played yourself. In fact, you know, we was doing James Brown last week, and we had played that one song, "Paid the Cost to Be the Boss." That's You Played Yourself.
Yeah, it's a dope episode. And of course, this is just a throwback to me. This makes me think of Yo MTV Raps and Rap City, because, you know, he had a video for that, I believe. Pretty sure that was a single.
The hardest song, and this was released in '89, but the hardest song on there for me, because in my felonious life at that time, that really
felonious life. He was a felon.
Was that Honey Child? That was like a reaction, because a friend of mine actually went through that months later. Like,
what's it gonna do? What's it gonna do?
Ain't that one?
Yeah.
What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? Today
day in Los Angeles, another youth loses his life. Gunshot wound to the head. Street violence is at an all-time high.
Yep, that's today.
But in that song, he told the story of a youth, a youth that killed somebody at a party, and now he's on the run. And I know somebody actually go. I mean, and it was just sometimes to this day I sit and watch some of the convictions. I don't know. I just want to. It's sad, but I just want to see the expression of the person who's getting like 100 years and things like that. But it all kind of started with that song there, Honey Child.
Damn. And you played yourself. I just want to play a little piece of this. I just like when I first heard that James Brown version of that, I was just like, oh man, damn. Ice-T. Hate that song.
Yeah, that was back in the day when we was just snatching up and taking loops. And then, ultimately we got in trouble for it. So things had to change. But you know what? We basically brought the shone the light back on the OGs before us and brought it to the forefront. So, hip hop did a very good job of sort of like resurrecting and honestly showing a tribute to, the music that came before us.
I thought Lord Finesse did a better job of sampling that
though.
It's not the cleanest. It's not the cleanest. This is not the cleanest production of that. You know what I'm saying? But still he did a great job. Honestly, it's just a great song, and it's it's a great message. But I mean, just the whole always say that you can rap, you can have the style that you are, and you can just do that for like 10, 12 songs and just like whatever. But some people kind of figure out, okay, let me do this real slow thing. This is going to be really completely different. This is where I'm kind of talking. This is sort of like variety thing. And I felt like, the way he did it on this one, this is basically you stepping outside the box, taking a risk, and then stepping back and going, that kind of works. So, and sometimes sometimes the greatest things come out of just sticking your neck out and taking a risk, doing something you don't think maybe not work, but just do it. Lay out for it and step back. And if it's trash, throw it away. But if it's special, use it.
But would you say that this album marks his demise?
Well, what was that?
He said, "Did you think this album marks his demise?"
Like that was the end of his reign in rap music or his position of influence.
This was about the last of the albums that I kind of paid attention to, if I paid attention to anything, because anything after this, actually, as far as albums go, I wasn't really, I kind of moved on because hip hop was kind of moving on. So I was getting into a whole lot of other people. In fact, around the same time, this is when you got We're on the Same Gang. And
I hate to say demise, because I really feel like sometimes you as an artist, you kind of are what you are, but just the masses kind of go in a different situation. I don't think that he necessarily fell off as much as just that, he wasn't really a reflection of what was really the moment of what was going on.
Falling off.
Well, but I'm just saying it. But you saying falling off, to me, there's a difference between falling off when a dude is no longer good. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, when MC Shan did that Play It Again Shan album, to me, we used to always joke and sit there and go, that KRS is listening to this album going, I did that. I did that. And it was just like, look, Shan was taking a risk. And, and honestly, he did way doper things afterwards. So it's not but I'm just saying it. But this was a decrease of product. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to decrease in popularity. That's what I'm saying. To me, there's a little bit of a difference. We were always the underground, so the underground was never getting that mainstream love. So the fact that you weren't getting mainstream love didn't regulate how amazing your music was. You know what I'm saying? So I came from a different circle, so we never associated those two things. But hey, he did we talk about his cinematic career. I mean, because really. That when Lauryn Hill came out with her album and it blew up, to me, I was proud, like a proud daddy, because I felt like that was like the offspring of hip hop. That was like our success. That was all of our success, because everybody's seeing this example of hip hop. And I felt like when Ice-T transitioned to an actor and did New Jack City, I felt the same way, because I mean, I love that movie. It had a very hip hop vibe to it. And I mean, it was the transition into something bigger than just music. So you say fell off. I think he became more popular, just not musically.
Yeah, I believe that too. But as far as his MCing skills and everything, he wasn't as sharp as he used to be.
That's a whole nother argument. That's a whole nother argument.
Yeah, I don't think he fell off, but yeah, but his acting career took off, which kept him actually more relevant, actually, because he was like the blueprint for rapper actors at the time too. When he did come out with New Jack City and then started doing all these other movies. And then you started seeing your Ice Cubes and your Will Smiths and whoever came up behind them.
Queen Latifah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
But I see
we produced a whole generation.
Yeah, LL.
We produced a whole generation of musicians that just became just regular celebrities, like standards, just like whatever. You know what I'm saying? I always love that about our generation. As far as I'm very happy to see that.
I'm sorry. And I think from 88 about 1990 or 91.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was with Warner Brothers, but they had him, or he voluntarily himself. He was on the media circuit big time. You could not, like, during the week, whatever daytime show, he was on there in defense of rap.
Cop Killer.
The top prior to Cop Killer. When NWA and them, the legality too around. Well, that was Cop Killer, but it was a gangster stuff though. He was on those shows like at that time.
Donahue, we had those shows. We definitely that's what I used to love about those talk shows. We got to a point where talk shows were just fighting, but Donahue was substance.
Hardball questions. They had to justify with their because this was new, saying this type of like that 6 in the morning song. That was the first time that. You got, like, to me, drugs, killing, misogyny, all of it just in boom, one song. So they had to justify that doing that type of stuff. So, Cube and NWA and Schoolie D, they were on a host of shows all the time talking about rap.
And they were defending this stuff, and they would always say, like, you guys ain't going after these rock people. They're doing the exact same stuff. It's just that you can hear us a little clearer because, we're talking. As opposed we're rapping as opposed to screaming and and that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing too. But it was definitely. But I mean, that was definitely that movement.
Yeah. So actually, you know what? We actually running kind of short on time here. So let's see if we can kind of speed this up here. So then you had that album. Then you had the OG album that came out in like what 90, 91. Think about 91, the OG Original Gangster. When he came out with this song called Original Gangster, I kind of looked at him like, bro, you don't have to prove yourself. We know who you are. And that was right there. That's when he kind of lost me right there. It was like, dude, you ain't really got to do all that, bro.
Exhibit 1, falling off the rap.
He said his past is expired. They're like, why don't go back to the hood anymore? It's like, my past is expired, man. It happens, you know what I'm saying? So, but you talk about that. That's why I was just thinking about transitioning more into like from that point. You talk about what his celebrity from music to the movies, because then you got like for example Ricochet. He was in Ricochet with Denzel Washington. He did the soundtrack. That song is a dope song, Ricochet.
Yeah.
And that's they're at the Watts Towers, which as I understand, I don't think the Watts Towers is up anymore.
Yeah, I think they're up there. They still up there.
Oh, yeah. So then there's that, and then he did a Trespass.
Yeah,
he did Trespass with Ice Cube. Now I'm gonna tell you, this song Trespass is one of the dopest songs ever. I love this song. This is one of the Ice Cube's greatest sort of like just prime Ice Cube rap sessions. And he absolutely murdered Ice-T on the song. Me and Brick Walls used to always talk about like, Ice-T is a respectable rapper, all this other stuff, he's a legend, but boy, he got outclassed on this song. And it wasn't just the fact that Ice Cube was on a whole nother level, but literally the track would get energized and do more behind, Ice Cube's parts. So go check out Trespass from the movie Trespass. You literally just got to look up Trespass on YouTube. And I mean, the things that Ice Cube did on that, got to get more money, can't get sex with no money. He played into all the tropes, all the sayings, but the way he delivered it and the energy, you know what I'm saying? Just Cube was just a master class of bodying somebody on a song. So Go check it out.
Well, one thing I can say is after this, bro, you know, Ice-T, you know, his acting career just really just took off, and his rapping career kind of like, you know, faded into the background a little bit, which was actually cool because, you know what, he was older at this point. He always been older because, you know, this man started rapping. He had to be in his late 20s. You know, he was old, one of the older rappers to actually come out when he did come out. Because you got to think about it. When he was going at LL was damn near half his age. Real talk.
Hey, but also think about this. You know, we talk about his rap relevance. He was doing what he was doing with Body Count. So, you know, he still had that metal thing. So he was still musically, he was still musically doing stuff. Yeah, you know.
I mean, that was, they only had that one album. Like I think Cram Corn had said they only had that one album, 92, and then they had another album recently that they had released. So they wasn't really doing too much, you know, but they did do some other stuff. You know, hey, Ice-T, don't get me wrong, because he is like a mentor. You know, he was the blueprint for a lot of stuff. He's an actual, you know, when you listen to him talk, he got nothing but game. He's never been too much smut, except, you know, the little thing he went through with Darlene, whatever that is. You can go read her book, and, you know, shout out to Darlene. That's a good book that she wrote called Definition of Down. Y'all might want to check it out. She gives a lot of insight. Ice-T was a good dude, bro. He's one of my favorite rappers as far as like, not really like lyrical rappers, but just overall as a person, you know, as a hip hop.
His overall contribution.
Yeah, exactly.
Overall contribution. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he goes on my Rushmore as one of the best peoples in rap. Real talk.
Go check out Art of Rap, the Something from Nothing. Great documentary. Giving mad props to the OGs. You know what I'm saying? Anything that basically gives props to guys like Grandmaster Caz, who, you know, we talk about the legendary guys that we love from who they talk about. We talk about Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane says basically, I'm an evolution from Grandmaster Caz. You know what I'm saying? I got a lot of stuff from him. So, and you talk about Run DMC, the whole back and forth, that was the Cold Crush Brothers, you know, those routines. So, you know, that's that OG stuff where that came from. So, you know, big ups to the OGs, and Ice-T was one of them, and he was down with them. He's got their respect, and, you know, that's what's up.
Hey, but quick question, outside of Rhyme Syndicate, has he, because I can think of one collaboration, Pac and Cube, strictly my niggas album. But what's up with his collaborations? Do you know of any? Like even with King T or
honestly, yeah, because I mean, I felt he was more of like an executive Big Brother type situation as far as to as a a person, a feature guy. You know what I'm saying? Because after a point, I really didn't hear too much from him as a rapper. You know, and I always got to remind people there was a period of time where I was heavy into music. I wasn't really trying to listen to other people's stuff. So when I was an active DJ, you know, obviously you have to play everything. You're listening and taking in everything. But I would say that somewhere around the early 90s, for all intents and purposes, I wasn't hearing from him except for that, like that soundtrack stuff, like you talk about Ricochet and Trespass. You know what I'm saying? So I can't really speak on it.
He worked with Bambaataa on the song. Outside of hip hop, that's about it.
But we talk about his music, his movie career. We got to talk about his TV career, because the bottom line is he's still on that show to this day.
Yeah.
Just think about that. You know what I'm saying? This show has been running for the longest. He's getting steady money from this. You know, it's just, you know, it's such a success story. You know what I'm
all
saying?
All type of comedic memes about him on the show too. Just that are viral.
So yeah, so you know that's what's up, and you know what that's
the Soulja Boy beat. Not gonna talk about the Ice-T. Soulja Boy.
You know we can talk about that, but I want to say that he joked about it was payback for all that cop killer that they ultimately made him a cop on New Jack City and made him a cop on what's his TV show called? All I know is the dun. What's the name of that show? I never watched it, but What's the name of his TV show? Well, the bottom line, you know what the show is. You want to talk about the beef? Okay, Law and Order. Yeah, he had a moment. He had a little blip where somehow he allowed himself to get sucked into the most trifling of nothing but beefs with Soulja Boy. You know, and this was crazy. You know what I'm saying? This is you just growing. You talk about LL being half his age. Soulja Boy was probably like a quarter of his age. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
grown ass man.
His grandson. That's
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, his son was talking about, tipping up, at the time, because that's how old, the age difference between Soulja Boy and Ice-T, and and Ice-T's son. But even Ice-T admitted that, I need to pull back from that. I shouldn't even lower myself to get in that. And honestly, it was kind of funny to see the evolution of Soulja Boy, who is the Superman, all this other stuff, to just basically being a bot blood type of situation, not to be knocking his brother. Again, to me, I'm not a part of the gang culture, so I really don't like to speak on the gang culture. And I always say that, look, gangsters aren't the only tough people. You don't got to be a gangster to be a killer. There's killers that ain't gangsters. You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is, I tend to respect the human being as a problem, a potential problem, and just leave that respect there. So again, nothing but respect to that guy. But
I'm glad he finessed his way out of that, because he had really kind of made an embarrassment of himself, man. I don't know, like mid-50s, late 50s, going after Soulja Boy. It was unprovoked, and the claim that he made was wild and outrageous. Soulja Boy single-handedly killed hip hop. That's just
I don't see. That's why I'm saying
that's not really what he said. Really, I mean, it was it was off. He was actually in the booth recording. He made an off-the-cuff comment, said "fuck Soulja Boy."
But he did make this comment, and honestly, I agree that, look, this was trash rap, but it was catchy. It's something that really, you know what I'm saying? But it was like, when you think about the culture that he's representing and where he's coming from, and then you see something like this Soulja Boy super song, this is the beginning of sort of like YouTube rap. You know what I'm saying?
How is Soulja Boy any different from Joeski Love, Pee Wee? That's what a point that Joeski Love made.
Wait. Joeski was rapping. I'm sorry, he was way more sophisticated rapping than how dare you compare the Pee Wee rap? First of all, this is a banging ass beat, and this is playing into a dance. It's okay to do dance music, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, but it was just the quality of it. I mean, he sounded like a little baby on it. He sounded like a baby on it. You know what I'm saying? And it was crap rap. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like that. To me, the dopest thing about that Superman song was the vibe, the dance, and the chant. But the rap was garbage. You know what I'm saying? But again, that was the next generation. If that's what they want to do, sometimes we can't just be telling people to get off our lawn. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes people fall back.
It's equivalent to Joeski Love. I mean, this is Joeski Love's opinion. And he got on Ice-T about what the criticism he gave of Soulja Boy, because Ice-T is in Joeski Love's Pee Wee music video dancing. So, like, how you go get on? A dance record is a dance record.
The song, because again, the song was crap. He felt like it was an insult to like intelligent like rap music. Like, it's, again, dancing is fine. We love dancing. I came out of breakdancing. I always tell people, hip hop was about dancing. It wasn't about being a gangster. It wasn't about being tough. It's always about being the party. It was birthed in the party. It was about dancing, not being too cool. It's about socializing and stuff like that. That's all good and great. I'm talking about the quality. How dare you compare? You go listen to that song, Say Joe or whatever that, to the quality of Soulja Boy. I'm just saying that they're on different levels. There's a song I remember. These did a song called was it from the Peter Griffin? These dudes. This is a dance song. That's a dope ass song. It's a dope song. It's a dope video. It's whatever. These are youngsters just tapping into whatever. But I'm telling you, young people still do dope things. You just got to connect to the youngsters that are doing the dope stuff. Some people are basically doing like crap, and it just goes over, and it's kind of offensive to the other people. You know what I'm saying? That's why he said what he said. I'm not saying you should have
an opinion too. His opinion about Soulja Boy's song was the best thing about it was when it's going off. In fact, that's what we're about to do right here. Go on off. So we'd like to thank y'all once again for joining us here at the Spin That Back show, 10:30 Saturday mornings, right after the Focus Up show. I don't know what we're going to be doing next week, but just check in on us. If we ain't here, just go back to the channel and look at one of the shows that you probably haven't checked out. I'd like to thank y'all. Hit that like, share, subscribe, leave a comment too if you can. We do appreciate it. And we're going to be out of here. We'll hit y'all when we catch y'all, all right?